Arriving at the sign-on to ride from London to Paris with my brother saw the journey I'd started from home as an individual become a team pursuit, a start line for a literal and metaphorical journey of discovery for myself and for others, and the inevitable series of judgments that go hand in hand with a challenge like this. Judgment of my own and others' abilities, judgment of my training, judgment of whose wheel to follow, judgment of when to push it or when to sit in the wheels. And it started with kit, not in a snobby way. There were some incredible bikes, but also some commuter rides that hadn't been cleaned or clearly serviced. Wow. But then the mind games start. Have I overestimated how hard this whole thing will be? And seemingly lots of disorganised people with kit everywhere. My brother and I do possess military grade preparation. In fact, look at how similar these two pictures of our preparation for our daily musette bags are. But all these judgments and assumptions would be put to the test at 05:30 the next day when we ride out toward Folkestone. And so at 05:30 began the judgment of the event. It was well organised, assertive, seamless, water stops planned and slick, punctures, crashes, all dealt with brilliantly, beyond brilliantly by our ride captains. They were truly the superheroes of the event. Calm, collected, organised, funny, charismatic and incredible riders. Then add to this our NEG riders, keeping the rolling roadblock going, not stopping for red lights, junctions, roundabouts. It was a petrol head's Twitter rant wet dream. But we were allowed to do this, of course, and it was awesome, just awesome. Day one done, London to Folkestone, 165 kilometres, ferry, Calais, hotel, beer, bed. The next day saw a lot of us making the same judgment. Can I do this? My legs felt good, so my brother and I let the stiff-legged riders take the hotel lift and we took the stairs. Some unstamped paperwork saw 90 riders not have to put that question to the test, as their bikes hadn't made it through the Brexit mess, and I think some were quietly grateful for this half day off before being reunited with their bikes. My judgment on this? Brexit was a catastrophic mistake. Let's move on. Let's move on to see how the legs feel on day two. Clip in, pedal, yeah, they're good. Puncture saw me get paced back onto the group by two ride captains who said we didn't have to ride hard to get back on and that we had plenty of time. I asked that as my legs felt good and the roads were closed, could we press on? And yes, we could. And we did. The following 5 minutes of riding hard past whistling moto riders through French villages is the closest I'll ever get to being in a pro breakaway, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. In fact, even writing these words now, I can still feel the buzz of excitement. It was easily one of the best moments of, well, my life. And my legs, they were good, really good. Calais to Amiens, 168 kilometres. A walk to see the magnificent Notre Dame, beer, bed. Day 3 and to Paris we ride. I've heard it said many times in the last decade or so that cycling is the new golf, and it seems they may be right. Perhaps living in the West Country and riding for somewhat parochial cycling clubs that charge £1 a month is as far away from London metaphorically as it is literally. One person's once-in-a-lifetime cycling trip compared to a hedge fund manager's regular weekend jolly, having recently swapped 18 holes for 22 gears and a 9-iron for Di2, Ping for Pinarello and a Norland tumbler of Bowmore for a beading of water. But the conversations about seed funding and swapping the commute in the Aston to the S-Works are probably still very much the same as they are on the golf course. Or at least so I'd imagine. I tend to see the best in people until they inevitably prove me wrong, which some did quite quickly. But others restored my faith in humans and my better judgment, even if we were, and always will remain, worlds apart. Over the 3 days we rode and chatted with Brian Smith and James Golding, learning about what they do and did what they have done and what the bike has brought to them. Multiple national championships and what it's like to ride 400 miles in a day. How the world sees and judges what they do as people, and the bike is at the centre of it all. The conversations went from talking about modded Trek Metabones or feelings about the years and wins between national jerseys to talking about families, commitments, hope, fear, nerves and joy. In the 80s, the Paris traffic was notorious for gridlock. Good traffic management and reduction, along with reliable and cheap public transport, mean the roads are very different these days, and the UK could take note. Traffic in Paris that day was free-flowing until we rode through and closed the roads. So many landmarks. It's hard to ride a bike having your breath taken away. It's hypoxic training for cyclists. Maybe it's a thing. And then there they were, underneath the Eiffel Tower. Bex, Zach, Indy, my dad, my stepmum, and we had done it. Well, we got to Paris anyway. There was more to come tomorrow, and my brother and I headed to the hotel for our final night on the tour. And judging by everything so far, it was going to be pretty good. Amiens to Paris, 177 kilometres, hotel, beer, people watch, bed. The next day was a pedal stroke by pedal stroke judgment of what the bike means to me, what it's brought me and how it shone a light in my darkest days and lit up and given me some of the best times of my life. Riding with my brother, seeing him push himself after crashing in the first 20k of the first day, riding, chatting or not chatting and riding through Paris onto the Rue de Rivoli, purposefully off the back of the bunch on our own. I've misjudged how I'd feel riding on the finishing circuit of the Tour de France in Paris. It's the first time it's ever happened. Amateurs riding the course before the pros, celebrating the start of what turned out to be an outstanding and historic first ever Tour de France Femme. After 3 days of more than 100 miles a day, the closed roads, the respect of the drivers in France, hoping my brother would be okay, chasing back after my puncture, so many things, highs, lows, laughs, grumbles. It was an ending to those 3 days that in itself was beyond perfect. It was dreamlike. But as we rode along the banks of the Seine, past the Eiffel Tower, under the famous and infamous tunnels, I began to think of David Miller's essay on his solo breakaway in 2013. Under the Tunnel de Tuileries, where he threw a bead on to the firemen under there, the only inhabitants down there on race day, I had Brian Smith on my wheel, and into the sunshine again and onto the Rue de Rivoli. Again thinking of Miller on the smooth gutter, staying off the cobbles, brushing the gendarmes, and the stars aligned, and as I made my way to the gutter, well... Jeff Pearce is one of only 3 people since 1979, and 6 in the entire history of the race, to win on the Champs-Élysées from a breakaway, and this was in 1987 when Stephen Roche won. At the time I thought he may be the only English speaker to ever lightly win the Tour. I thought I may have to adopt myself as Irish, but little did I know the dominance that GB would exert over more recent times. Although out of the 3 British winners of the Tour de France, none of them have been born in England. But 1987 was the start of my obsession. Pearce crossing the line first and Roche not far behind in the Maillot Jaune he had secured on stage 21 with his true suffering up La Plagne. So many moments of history on those cobbles, these cobbles. Le Monde beating Fignon by 8 seconds on the final stage of the TT in 89, which is the last time the Tour was decided on the final day. The terrifyingly 9-syllabled Demologine Abdu-Japarov, a name so complex that even he couldn't spell it properly, and his bizarre crash in 91, or Cav in 2009, 10, 11 and especially 2012, whilst being led out by the yellow jersey of Wiggins himself. All here, all on these cobbles, the cobbles my tyres are on. Resting on my saddle there in the blazing sun, it wasn't the first time in my life I've been grateful for the size of Oakley jawbreakers as the tears came. I often say finishing lines feel like start lines sometimes, but for me, this is the most famous finishing line in cycling. So, how can I judge this? Or do I even need to? I know I've come back a little bit changed and I've experienced something that most people will never ever get to do. If I'm honest, I don't really think I'll ever be able to quantify the experience, and perhaps I don't really need to analyse any of it. The novelist Nicholas Sparks said, "You're going to come across people in your life who will say all the right words at the right times, but in the end, it's always their actions you should judge them by. It's actions, not words, that matter." Well, you've heard my words and you've seen my actions, so I guess it's over to you to judge now.